Commander Lee Daeho stood in the control room of Luna Base and stared at the blue light floating in front of him. The message had arrived without warning, cutting through every defense Earth had built around their secret communications network. The alien face looking back at him had smooth blue skin and large black eyes that seemed to see right through him. "Humans of Earth," the creature said in perfect English. "I am Ambassador Kelrin of the Valari. You have violated the most sacred law of the Galactic Council. You have developed faster-than-light communication without permission." Daeho felt his stomach drop. For 3 years, Earth's best scientists had worked in complete secrecy to build the quantum communication network. They had been so careful. Every transmission was encoded. Every signal was hidden. How had the aliens found out? This violation of Galactic Code 7 Alpha is an act of rebellion against the natural order. The blue alien continued. "The Council has ruled the galaxy for 3,000 years. We maintain peace through control of technology. No species may advance beyond their assigned level without our approval." Captain Park Minji stepped closer to Daeho. Her hand was resting on her sidearm, though they both knew it would be useless against beings who could cross the galaxy in ships. "Sir, how did they even know we were here? Earth was supposed to be hidden." The alien seemed to hear her question. "Your species has been under observation since you first split the atom. We allowed you to develop space travel because you showed promise. But this," the image gestured to something off-screen, "this changes everything." Dr. Kim Young-ho pushed through the crowd of officers and technicians who had gathered around the holographic display. His lab coat was stained with coffee and his hair was a mess from working 20-hour days. "Commander, the quantum signatures match our prototype exactly. Only 5 people in the world knew the complete specifications for our network. Someone sold us out," Daeho said quietly. The alien was still talking. "You have 72 standard hours to surrender this technology and submit to neural reconditioning. Your leaders will undergo memory adjustment to remove all knowledge of advanced science. Your species will return to its proper place in the galactic order." "And if we refuse?" Daeho asked, though he already knew the answer. The alien's expression did not change. "Then your planet will be sterilized. Every human will die. Your world will become another monument to the price of disobedience. We have done this 17 times before." The transmission ended. The control room fell silent except for the quiet hum of the life support systems. Through the transparent aluminum windows, Earth hung in space like a blue and white marble. 8 billion people lived down there. Most of them had no idea that aliens even existed, let alone that those aliens were threatening to kill everyone. Lieutenant Colonel Choi Sung-min was the first to speak. "Sir, what are our options?" Daeho looked around the room at the faces of his people. These men and women represented the best of humanity's military and scientific minds. They had spent years preparing for first contact with alien civilizations. But none of their plans had included this scenario. "We could surrender," Choi continued. "Give them the technology. Accept their neural conditioning. Keep our planet alive." "That's not living," Park Minji said sharply. "They'll turn us into slaves. Look what they did to the other species they mentioned. How many civilizations have they destroyed?" Dr. Kim pulled up a holographic display showing their quantum communication network. The web of entangled particles stretched across the solar system, connecting every human outpost from Mercury to the Kuiper Belt. "There might be another option. The communication array we built doesn't just send messages. The quantum entanglement principles could theoretically be weaponized." "You want to turn our communication system into a weapon?" Daeho asked. "The quantum cascade effect could propagate through any network that uses similar technology. If we can create a resonance frequency that destabilizes their quantum matrices." "You're talking about a virus that spreads through their computer networks," Park Minji realized. "Could it work?" Kim rubbed his tired eyes. "Theoretically, yes, but the risks are enormous. A quantum cascade doesn't just affect one system. It could spread to every connected network in the galaxy. The effects would be unpredictable." "How unpredictable?" Daeho asked. "We could accidentally destroy every advanced civilization in known space." The weight of that possibility settled over the room like a heavy blanket. Through the communications console, they could hear reports from Earth's defense stations. Panic was starting to spread as rumors of the alien fleet leaked to the news networks. Several governments were already preparing surrender broadcasts. Daeho studied the tactical displays showing Earth's defensive positions. They had 36 ships in the entire Earth Defense Force, most of them converted mining vessels with improvised weapons. Against aliens who could travel faster than light and had already destroyed 17 other worlds, humanity's military might looked pathetic. How long would the Cascade weapon take to build? He asked. I would need to modify every transmitter in the network, Kim replied. The calculations alone would require more computing power than we have. Maybe 18 hours for the math? Another 12 to make the physical changes? We don't have 30 hours, Park Minji said. Their deadline is in 16. General Nam Hyun-woo's voice crackled through the communication system from his command post on Earth. Commander Lee, we're detecting massive energy signatures at the edge of the solar system. Whatever's coming, it's big. Daeho closed his eyes for a moment. When he opened them, his decision was made. Signal all Earth Defense Force stations. Prepare for full mobilization under Protocol Omega. Dr. Kim, start working on your Cascade weapon. General Nam, get me a direct line to the President. Sir, Choi said quietly. We're really going to fight them? We can't win a conventional war. No, we can't, Daeho agreed. But we can make them regret starting one. Humanity has spent too long following rules written by people who want to keep us down. Maybe it's time to break some rules. Alarms began sounding throughout Luna Base as the base switched to combat readiness. Through the observation windows, Daeho could see the running lights of human ships as they moved to defensive positions. It wasn't much of a fleet, but it was all they had. Dr. Kim was already at his workstation, fingers flying over holographic controls as he began the impossible task of turning their communication network into a weapon. Commander, even if this works, we won't know the full consequences until after we fire it. We could be saving Earth only to doom the galaxy. Then we better make sure it's worth it, Daeho replied. Park Minji was coordinating with the fleet commanders, her voice steady despite the magnitude of what they were facing. All ships report ready for combat operations. EDS Indomitable is taking point position. On the main display, energy readings began appearing at the edge of the solar system. Whatever the aliens were bringing to enforce their ultimatum was starting to arrive. Soon, Earth would face its first interstellar war. Daeho looked around the control room one more time. People were about to make history. In 16 hours, we either save our species or we all die trying. Either way, no one will ever be able to say that humanity went quietly. The countdown clock on the main display showed 15 hours and 57 minutes until the alien deadline expired. Outside, the stars watched in silence as the smallest species in the galaxy prepared to fight the largest empire in known space. The only law of the stars was about to be broken, and humanity would either burn for their defiance or they would burn down everything that stood in their way. President Yoon Ji-won stood in the underground bunker beneath the White House and watched the screens showing massive shapes appearing at the edge of the solar system. The alien fleet had arrived 6 hours early. 12 enormous ships, each one bigger than any city on Earth, hung in space like dark clouds promising a terrible storm. Madam President, Commander Lee Daeho's voice came through the secure communication line from Luna Base. Our deep space sensors are counting 147 enemy ships. The big ones are the size of small moons. Secretary of Defense Han Soo-young leaned over the tactical display, her face pale. Our entire fleet is 36 ships, most of them converted cargo vessels with weapons bolted on. This isn't a battle. This is an execution. Dr. Kim Young-ho appeared on the main screen, broadcasting from his laboratory on Luna Base. Dark circles under his eyes showed he had not slept since the alien ultimatum arrived. The quantum cascade weapon is still theoretical. I need at least 18 more hours to complete the mathematical calculations, then another 12 hours to modify our transmitters. We don't have 30 hours, President Yoon replied. Their deadline expires in 10 hours, around the bunker. Television screens showed chaos spreading across Earth. Despite government attempts to keep the alien threat secret, news of the fleet had leaked to the media. Highways were jammed with millions of people fleeing the cities. Stock markets had crashed. Several small countries had already announced they would surrender to the aliens. General Nam Hyun-woo, the highest-ranking military officer in the country, pulled up defensive positions on the main display. We can evacuate civilians to underground shelters, but against weapons that can destroy entire planets, I'm not sure it will matter. It matters because we're not giving up, President Yoon said firmly. Dr. Kim, what do you need to finish your weapon? Computing power. More processing capability than any single computer on Earth can provide. The quantum probability calculations are incredibly complex. Captain Park Minji's voice joined the conversation from her ship. The EDS Indomitable, now positioned with the rest of Earth's small fleet between the planet and the alien armada. What about linking computer networks together? Gaming systems, cryptocurrency mining operations, university research computers. If we could connect them all. Distributed computing across the entire internet, Dr. Kim said, his voice growing excited for the first time in days. Yes, that might work. But I would need administrative access to thousands of systems around the world. Consider it done, President Yoon said. She turned to her chief of staff. Contact every major technology company, every government with significant cyber capabilities. Tell them exactly what we're facing. This isn't about national politics anymore. This is about the survival of our species. As the president's staff rushed to coordinate what would be the largest hacking operation in human history, Commander Lee Dae-ho received an incoming transmission from the alien fleet. The same blue-skinned Valari ambassador appeared on his screen, but this time he was not alone. A massive figure in elaborate armor stood behind him, its face hidden beneath a ceremonial helmet decorated with symbols that seemed to shift and move. I am High Executor Vorthak of the Dominion Guard, the armored figure spoke in a voice like grinding stone. Your species continues to develop prohibited technology despite our clear warning. This defiance ends now. Prepare to receive our boarding parties for immediate neural restructuring of your leadership. Dae-ho straightened in his command chair. This is Commander Lee Dae-ho of the Earth Defense Force. We reject your authority over our species. Withdraw from our system immediately. The alien's laugh sounded like breaking glass. Your primitive minds cannot understand the order we represent. We have eliminated 17 species for violations much smaller than yours. Their worlds are now empty monuments to the price of disobedience. Then you haven't met humans before, Dae-ho replied calmly. We have a saying on our world. The tree that would grow tall must have deep roots. Our roots go deeper than you know. The transmission ended. Within minutes, energy readings began spiking across the alien fleet as their weapons started charging. Captain Park Minji's voice came through on the emergency frequency. All ships, this is Indomitable. Enemy vessels are powering weapon systems. All hands to battle stations. Today we find out what humans are really made of. Across Earth's orbital defenses, thousands of men and women who had joined the military to protect their planet from other humans now faced the task of fighting for their entire species. Most were young, barely out of training. None had ever expected to face an enemy from the stars. On Luna Base, Dr. Kim watched as computer networks around the world came online and joined his desperate calculation project. Gamers in Seoul shut down their entertainment systems to help. Bitcoin miners in Iceland redirected their processing power from making money to making weapons. University computers in Boston, London, and Tokyo all linked together in humanity's greatest collaborative effort. Quantum matrices at 30% completion, Dr. Kim reported to the Crisis Center. The cascade effect is starting to stabilize, but I need more time. Lieutenant Colonel Choi Sung-min coordinated ground defenses as alien scout ships began dropping toward Earth's atmosphere. Luna Base were detecting atmospheric penetration over major population centers. These aren't just military targets. They're going after our cities. In the Geneva Crisis Center, President Yoon watched satellite feeds of alien soldiers moving through the streets of major cities around the world. The invaders wore powered armor and carried weapons that turned concrete and steel into expanding clouds of dust. Human military units fought back with everything they had, but conventional explosives seemed to pass harmlessly through the aliens' personal shields. Madam President, General Nam's voice crackled through the communication system. NORAD is confirming successful nuclear strikes on several enemy vessels, but they're repairing damage faster than we can cause it. Secretary Han looked up from her communication console, her face grim. We're getting reports from around the world. The aliens aren't just attacking military installations. They're systematically destroying our universities, research centers, and manufacturing facilities. They're trying to knock us back to the Stone Age, President Yoon realized. Make sure we can never threaten them again, even if some of us survive. Captain Park Minji's ship raced through the orbital battlefield like a comet of human determination. Her crew had managed to damage several alien destroyers using concentrated railgun fire. But for every enemy ship they hit, 2 more seemed to appear from the massive fleet. Commander Lee, she transmitted to Luna Base, we've identified what looks like a command vessel in the center of their formation. If Dr. Kim's weapon works, that should be our primary target. Deho studied the tactical display. The massive ship sat in the center of the alien formation like a predator watching its prey struggle. Minji, that vessel has reality-warping defenses. Our quantum cascade might not even reach it. Then we make sure it does, she replied. My ship is the fastest in the fleet. If I can get close enough to act as a relay point for the cascade signal. That's a suicide mission. Only if it doesn't work. Dr. Kim's voice cut through their conversation, filled with urgency. Quantum matrices at 60% completion, but I'm detecting massive energy buildups across the enemy fleet. I think they're preparing for planetary bombardment. On the main screen, energy patterns began forming around the alien dreadnoughts. The same weapons that had turned 17 other civilizations to cosmic dust were preparing to fire on Earth itself. President Yoon made the hardest decision any leader had ever faced. Dr. Kim, whatever you have ready, use it now. We can't wait for perfect. Madam President, at 60% completion, the cascade effect is completely unpredictable. It could backfire through our own networks and overload every connected system on Earth. If we don't try, there won't be an Earth left to worry about. Kim stared at the activation controls, his hands shaking slightly. Around him, the Lunabase crew watched in silence. Through the observation windows, they could see the lights of battle flashing across space like deadly fireworks. Captain Park Minji pushed her engines beyond their design limits, racing toward the alien command ship. I'm in position to relay the quantum signal. Whatever happens next, it's been an honor serving with all of you. Dr. Kim took a deep breath and placed his hand over the activation switch. All stations, this is Luna Base, initiating quantum cascade in 10 seconds. If this works, every alien ship using quantum entangled systems will experience total failure. If it doesn't work... He paused, unable to finish the thought. The countdown reached 0. Kim's hand slammed down on the control. Across the galaxy, every quantum network began to scream as impossible energies tore through the fabric of space itself. The quantum cascade exploded from Luna Base like an invisible wave of destruction, racing outward at the speed of thought through the networks that connected civilizations across the galaxy. Dr. Kim Young-ho watched his instruments with growing terror as the wave spread far beyond anything his calculations had predicted. On the alien flagship called Eternal Judgment, High Executor Vorthak felt his ship dying around him. The living computer systems that guided council vessels began screaming as impossible data patterns flooded their quantum minds. Emergency alarms wailed as section after section went dark. What have they done? The Valari ambassador shouted, his blue skin turning purple with fear. Captain Park Minji's ship, positioned between Luna Base and the enemy fleet, became the center of a technological hurricane. The Indomitable glowed white-hot as quantum energies passed through its modified communication systems. Her crew felt the ship shaking apart around them, but they held their positions. Signal strength holding steady, reported Chief Engineer Bae Donghyuk. The cascade is maintaining. Power through our relay systems, hull, temperature reaching critical levels called Navigator O. Sora. We can't keep this up much longer, Minji gripped her. Command chair as another wave of energy passed through the ship. Through the windows, she could see the alien fleet beginning to drift and tumble. The perfect formations that had seemed so terrifyingly organized were breaking apart as ship after ship lost control. On Earth, President Yoon Ji-won watched the battle feeds with amazement. The invincible warships that had erased human vessels with casual ease were now spinning through space like broken toys. Status report, she demanded. General Nam Hyunwoo checked his tactical displays. Enemy fleet is experiencing complete system failures across all vessels. No incoming weapons fire for the past 6 minutes. Our ground forces report that the alien soldiers are also affected. Their equipment is shutting down. But Dr. Kim's voice carried alarm. The cascade is still growing. It's following quantum network paths I never accounted for. The effect is spreading beyond our solar system. Secretary Han Soo-young looked up from her communication station. We're receiving automated distress signals from deep space, languages our computers don't recognize. The horrible truth hit President Yoon like a physical blow. How far is this spreading? Based on galactic quantum network structure, Kim replied, his voice shaking. Potentially across the entire galactic arm. Maybe beyond that. Commander Lee Deho's voice crackled through from Luna Base. Dr. Kim, can we stop the cascade? Negative. The quantum effect is feeding on itself now. It will continue until it either burns out naturally or he stopped speaking. Or what? Or until it reaches the quantum foundation of space and time itself. If that happens, we could see a collapse of physical laws across multiple star systems. High Executive Vorthak, trapped on his dying flagship, managed to establish a failing communication link to Luna Base. His image flickered with interference as more ship systems failed around him. "You cannot understand what you have accomplished," he said, his voice distorted by static. "The quantum networks do not just connect ships and planets. They connect everything. Trade routes, medical systems, life support for billions of beings across thousands of species." Deho stared at the alien commander. "You are going to destroy our entire world. One world to preserve galactic order. Now your cascade will collapse the systems that keep galactic civilization alive. You have started a dark age that will last thousands of years." Dr. Kim pulled up a galactic map showing the cascade spread. Red warning indicators expanded across star systems like a disease, each one representing failed quantum networks and collapsing technological infrastructure. "He's right," Kim said quietly. "The major space lanes all depend on quantum navigation systems. Without them, faster-than-light travel becomes impossible. Species that need interstellar trade for basic survival resources?" Captain Park Minji's voice cut through their conversation. "I'm seeing something new. The cascade wave is starting to weaken. Distance and quantum interference are breaking down the effect. How much damage before it stops?" President Yoon asked. Kim ran rapid calculations on his surviving computers. "Approximately 12,000 star systems will experience total quantum network collapse. Perhaps 300 billion intelligent beings will be affected." The weight of that number settled over Luna Base like a death shroud. In their desperate attempt to save Earth, they had potentially condemned a large portion of the galaxy to technological collapse. But Vorthak's image on the communication screen showed something unexpected. Not just anger, but what looked like respect. "Your species fights like the ancient builders," he said. "They too chose to break everything rather than surrender. It took us 2 million years to repair their damage." "The builders?" Daiho asked. "The race that existed before us. They created the quantum networks we inherited, then tried to transcend the laws of physics themselves. Their cascade was much larger than yours. As alien ships continued to drift powerless through the solar system, and as reports arrived of quantum failures across the galaxy, humanity faced the consequences of their rebellion. They had saved their world, but at a cost that would reshape galactic civilization for millennia. The stars themselves seemed to dim, as if the universe was holding its breath. Around Earth, the alien fleet hung motionless in space. Thousands of beings aboard those ships were now stranded far from home, their technology dead, their weapons silent. Some ships were already sending out primitive radio signals, the only communication method still working. "Madam President," General Nam reported, "we're receiving surrender requests from several alien vessels. They're asking for humanitarian assistance." The irony was bitter. The beings who had come to destroy humanity were now dependent on human mercy for their survival. Dr. Kim worked frantically at his computers, trying to understand the full scope of what they had unleashed. "The cascade has stabilized, but the damage is permanent. Every quantum network it touched will need to be completely rebuilt from the ground up." "How long will that take?" President Yoon asked. "Centuries. Maybe longer." The knowledge of quantum network construction was concentrated in a few advanced species. With their systems destroyed, that knowledge might be lost entirely. Captain Park Minji's ship limped back toward Earth, its hull scarred from channeling the quantum cascade. "Command, we're detecting escape pods launching from the alien fleet. Looks like they're abandoning ship." "All vessels, this is Earth Command," President Yoon broadcast on all frequencies. "Any beings requiring humanitarian assistance will be provided with aid according to our capacity. We are not your enemies." High Executive Vorthak appeared on screen one final time before his ship's power failed completely. "You have won, humans. But victory and wisdom are not the same thing. The galaxy you have created will be very different from the one you intended to save." As his image faded to static, the first alien escape pods began entering Earth's atmosphere, carrying refugees from the civilization that had sought to destroy them. The cascade was over. The real work was just beginning. 6 months after the cascade, Earth stood as the only world in known space with working faster-than-light technology. The quantum networks that had connected thousands of civilizations lay in ruins, replaced by primitive light-speed communications that left species isolated and desperate. Commander Lee Daeho walked through the corridors of Luna Base, past laboratories where human scientists worked around the clock to understand what they had done. Through the observation windows, he could see the alien fleet still drifting in the outer solar system, magnificent warships reduced to lifeless metal. Dr. Kim Young-ho had aged years in the past months. His hair had turned completely white from the stress of coordinating relief efforts across the galaxy. His display showed the scope of the disaster. Entire sectors cut off from interstellar trade, colony worlds dying as supply lines collapsed, refugee fleets crawling between stars at slower than light speeds. Latest reports, Kim said without looking up from his work. The Kepler industrial complex has gone silent. 4 billion Torvani workers operated those orbital factories. The Vegan Medical Center is requesting emergency supplies. Their quantum-guided surgical systems failed during a plague outbreak. President Yoon Ji-won had moved her administration to Geneva, establishing a crisis center to coordinate humanity's response to what historians would call the Great Silence. She studied refugee lists from hundreds of species, all seeking shelter in the one corner of space where technology still functioned. How many ships can we realistically support? She asked Secretary Han Soo-young. Our shipyards are working at maximum capacity, but we're still talking about converting civilian infrastructure to support alien biology. The crystalline entities need sulfur-based atmospheres. The Grellans require quantum-stabilized living spaces. Some of these refugees are from species we have never even heard of. Captain Park Min-ji, now promoted to admiral for her role in the battle, commanded the largest fleet in human history. Ships of every design flew under Earth's banner. Not through conquest, but through necessity. When your homeworld was dying, and only one species had the technology to travel between stars, old enemies became desperate allies. Admiral, came a transmission from her flagship. We're receiving another distress call. This one is from the Nexari Confederation. They're offering complete technology sharing in exchange for evacuation assistance. The Nexari had been one of the Council's most powerful member species. Their crystal cities were among the wonders of the galaxy. Now they were refugees, their entire civilization dependent on human charity. High Executor Vorthak sat in a detention facility on Luna's far side, no longer a conqueror but a source of valuable information. His armor had been replaced with simple clothes, his weapons taken away. But his knowledge of galactic politics had become more precious than gold. You still do not understand what you have accomplished, he told Daeho during their daily meetings. The Council maintained order for 3,000 years through fear of exactly this kind of technological collapse. The Builder's Cascade took millions of years to repair because no single species had the knowledge to rebuild. But we do, Daeho replied. Our quantum networks survived because we built them differently. We can help restore what was lost. Vorthak's laugh held no humor. Can you? Do you understand crystalline entity metabolism? Can you create gravitic whale neural interfaces? Your species has been in space for less than a century. You are trying to coordinate the needs of civilizations that are millions of years old. The truth of those words weighed heavily on Dr. Kim as he worked to modify human technology for alien use. Each species that arrived, seeking help, brought requirements that pushed human science to its breaking point. The Zeridians need quantum-stable pocket dimensions for their reproduction. Cycles, he reported to the Crisis Center. The Halcyon Collective requires gravitational fields that change at specific frequencies for their cities to remain stable. We're not just rebuilding communication networks. We're trying to sustain completely alien ways of life. But humanity adapted as it always had. Engineers in Shanghai worked alongside crystalline entity architects to design hybrid atmospheric systems. Biologists in São Paulo collaborated with Grellans to develop universal life support technology. Children who had grown up with virtual reality learned to communicate with species that thought in mathematical concepts. The transformation of human society was as dramatic as the galactic crisis itself. Earth cities expanded upward and outward to house refugee populations. New languages emerged, hybrid tongues that allowed communication between species that saw reality in completely different ways. President Yoon stood in the newly built Galactic Refugee Center in Geneva, watching human children play alongside young beings from a dozen different worlds. The playground had been designed for everything from energy-based life forms to creatures that needed specific gravity to survive. Progress report on the restoration project? She asked Dr. Kim during their weekly meeting. We have successfully established quantum communication nodes in 47 systems, he replied. But that's less than 2% of the affected networks. At current rates, full restoration will take approximately 800 years. 800 years, Yoon repeated. And in the meantime, we're the only stable technological civilization in this part of the galaxy, which makes us the effective government for approximately 1,200 species and 40,000 worlds, Secretary Han added grimly. We went from being a single world species to being responsible for galactic civilization in 6 months. Admiral Park Minji's voice joined the conversation from her position commanding the relief fleets. Madam President, we're receiving formal requests to join a human-led galactic confederation. Species that were conquering worlds for the Council 6 months ago are now asking to become our protectorates. The irony was not lost on any of them. In their desperate attempt to avoid becoming subjects of the Galactic Council, humans had accidentally become the inheritors of the Council's responsibilities. Dr. Kim pulled up a star chart showing the slow progress of network restoration. The good news is that we're learning. Each system we reconnect teaches us more about alien technology. The bad news is that some species won't survive long enough for us to reach them. How many? President Yoon asked quietly. Conservative estimates suggest that 20 to 30% of galactic civilization will collapse completely before we can restore their networks. We're talking about hundreds of billions of lives. The weight of that number hung over the room like a physical presence. Every day they delayed, entire worlds died. Every mistake they made cost civilizations their future. There is one positive development, Admiral Park reported. Several species have begun adapting their technology to work without quantum networks. The Torvani are developing new manufacturing techniques. The crystalline entities are sharing their atmospheric processing knowledge freely. Necessity breeds innovation, Forthak observed when told of these developments. Perhaps your cascade will ultimately make galactic civilization stronger. The Council's rigid control stifled technological development for millennia. As the first year after the cascade drew to a close, patterns began to emerge. Some species adapted and thrived in the new environment. Others clung to their dependence on lost technology and slowly faded away. And throughout it all, humanity found itself in the impossible position of being simultaneously savior and destroyer of galactic civilization. The stars still shone in the night sky, but the galaxy they illuminated was forever changed. And at the center of that change, on a small blue world that had once seemed destined for extinction, the descendants of apes who had learned to make fire now held the future of countless species in their hands. The burden of that responsibility would shape humanity for generations to come. 3 years after the Great Silence, the Sol system had become the beating heart of a transformed galaxy. What had once been the outer edge of known space now served as the capital of the Terran Federation, a loose alliance of species bound together by necessity and growing trust. Commander Lee Daeho, now bearing the rank of Grand Admiral, stood on the observation deck of humanity's crown, the massive space station that orbited Earth. Through the windows, he could see an incredible sight that greeted every visitor to the system. Thousands of ships from hundreds of species moving in careful coordination, their different engines creating a light show that painted space in every color imaginable. Dr. Kim Young-ho had been named Director of Galactic Restoration, leading teams of human and alien scientists in the enormous task of rebuilding quantum networks across the galaxy. His hair had gone completely white, but his eyes held the satisfaction that came from meaningful work. Status report on the Vega Sector restoration, he said to his mixed species team. Zara 9, a crystalline entity whose body looked like living diamond, responded with musical tones that were translated into human speech. Quantum stability achieved in 73% of targeted systems. The Torvani industrial complexes are back online. Their grateful songs fill the communication networks. President Yoon Jae-won, now holding the title of First Speaker of the Federation, worked from an expanded Geneva complex that had become the diplomatic center of known space. Representatives from species that had once viewed humans as primitive animals now sought her advice on everything from trade disputes to philosophical questions. The Nexari Confederation has completed integration of human quantum technology into their crystal matrices, Secretary Han Soo-young reported. Their cities are not only restored but improved. They're requesting permission to share the hybrid technology with other crystal-based civilizations. Approved, Yoon replied. The whole point of this federation is cooperation, not control. That philosophy had been the key to humanity's unexpected success as galactic leaders. Rather than imposing their will through force as the Council had done, humans had chosen to lead through example and assistance. Species that might have resented human authority instead found themselves welcomed as equal partners in rebuilding civilization. Captain Park Minji, now Fleet Admiral, commanded the Federation Navy from her flagship Terra's Daughter. Her fleet included not just human vessels but ships from dozens of species, their crews learning to work together despite completely different biologies and ways of thinking. Admiral, came a transmission from her Grellin's navigator. We're receiving a priority signal from Deep Scout vessel Horizon Walker. Captain Yoon reports first contact with a previously unknown species in the Andromeda Gap. This had become routine over the past year. As quantum networks were restored to distant sectors, they frequently discovered species that had been isolated even before the cascade. Many were refugees from the Council's earlier purges, entire civilizations that had hidden in empty space for thousands of years. High Executor Vorthak had become an unlikely advisor to the Federation Council, his knowledge of galactic history proving invaluable in understanding the complex web of alliances and conflicts that had shaped the galaxy. He worked from a comfortable office in the Geneva complex, no longer a prisoner but not quite free to leave. The species Captain Yoon has encountered, he told Admiral Park during their briefing, are likely the descendants of the Wanderer fleets. When the Council began its expansion, they chose exile over surrender. They have been traveling in deep space for over 4,000 years. What can we expect from them? Park asked. Suspicion, fear. They have spent thousands of years avoiding contact with any organized galactic power. Your approach will need to be very careful. Dr. Kim reviewed the deep space sensor data from Captain Yoon's ship. Their technology is completely unknown. No quantum signatures, no recognizable energy patterns. They might be using scientific principles we haven't discovered yet. This was the new challenge facing the Federation. As they restored connections to distant parts of the galaxy, they found not just grateful refugees but species that had developed along completely different technological paths. Each contact required careful diplomacy and scientific exchange. President Yoon stood before the Federation Assembly, addressing representatives from over 300 species. The chamber had been designed to accommodate every form of life imaginable. Water tanks for aquatic beings, gravity fields for species that required specific conditions, even quantum containers for energy-based life forms. 3 years ago, we faced extinction, she said, her words translated into hundreds of languages and communication methods. In our desperation, we broke the rules that governed galactic civilization. The consequences of that action continue to spread outward, bringing both challenges and opportunities. A Torvani delegate, its crystalline form chiming with musical tones, spoke through its translator. The human species has proven that strength without oppression is possible. The old council ruled through fear. You lead through hope. But with that leadership comes responsibility, Yoon continued. We cannot simply restore what was. The old system was built on inequality and suppression of technological development. We have the opportunity to build something better. Grand Admiral Deho received reports from across the galaxy as Federation fleets continued their work. Former Council strongholds had been transformed into research stations where species shared knowledge freely. Worlds that had been strip-mined for resources were being restored through cooperative effort. Trade routes that had once carried tribute to Council worlds now carried aid to struggling colonies. The Kepler Industrial Complex reports full production restoration, his aide, Lieutenant Huang Minho announced. They're requesting permission to begin manufacturing quantum communication equipment for non-aligned species. Granted, Deho replied, but maintain monitoring systems. We want to help, not create new dependencies. Dr. Kim's latest project was perhaps the most ambitious, the construction of a new kind of quantum network that would be impossible to cascade. By spreading the quantum connections across multiple dimensions, any future attempt to weaponize the system would simply cause localized failures rather than galaxy-wide collapse. The builders made the same mistake we did, he explained to his research team. They created a single interconnected system vulnerable to cascade failure. Our new network will be robust, redundant, and self-repairing. The work was painstaking, requiring cooperation between species that thought about reality in completely different ways. But slowly, carefully, a new kind of galactic infrastructure was taking shape. As Admiral Park's ship entered the Andromeda Gap to make contact with the mysterious Wanderer fleet, she carried with her the hopes of a transformed galaxy. The Federation approach was simple: extend the hand of friendship, offer aid without conditions, and respect the right of all species to determine their own future. The response from the Wanderers came not as a transmission, but as an action. Their massive generation ships, each one a world unto itself, powered down their weapons and opened their docking bays in the universal gesture of peaceful intent. Back on Earth, children who had grown up in the post-Cascade era played games that would have been impossible to imagine just years before. Human kids learning mathematics from crystalline entity teachers, young Torvani composing symphonies with human musicians, Grellans and humans working together to design spacecraft that could carry crews from a dozen different species. The galaxy was healing, but it was healing differently than before. The rigid hierarchies of the Council had been replaced by a fluid network of alliances based on mutual benefit. Species that had been enemies for thousands of years learned to work together. Technologies that had been suppressed for ages were freely shared and improved. As the first decade of the post-Cascade era approached, one thing had become clear. The quantum cascade had not just ended the age of the Council. It had begun something entirely new, something that no single species could have created alone. The age of the Federation was just beginning. 10 years after the Great Silence, the galaxy looked nothing like it had under the Council's rule. The Sol system bustled with activity as beings from thousands of worlds worked together, in ways their ancestors would never have believed possible. Grand Admiral Lee Deho stood in the command center of New Geneva Station, watching the daily miracle of interspecies cooperation unfold before him. Ships from the crystalline entities worked alongside Torvani industrial vessels to construct a new type of space habitat. Grellan scientists collaborated with human engineers to solve problems that neither species could handle alone. Status: report on the Galactic Restoration Project. He requested from his aide, Lieutenant. Colonel Huang Minho consulted his displays. Quantum networks restored in 843 systems. That's approximately 60% of the affected regions. The new cascade-proof design is working perfectly. Dr. Kim Young-ho, now elderly but still sharp, had become something of a legend across the galaxy. His work on multidimensional quantum networks had revolutionized galactic communication. More importantly, his insistence on sharing the technology freely had prevented any single species from gaining the kind of control the Council had once wielded. The beauty of the new system, he explained to a group of young scientists from 12 different species, is that it cannot be controlled by any one civilization. The quantum connections exist across multiple dimensions simultaneously. Even if one species tried to weaponize the network, the fail-safes would isolate their systems without affecting anyone else. President Yoon Ji-won, in her 10th year as first speaker, had watched the Federation grow from a desperate alliance of refugees to a thriving community of equals. The Geneva complex now housed representatives from over 1,500 species, making it the most diverse gathering of intelligent life in galactic history. Today we face a question our ancestors never had to consider, she said during her annual address to the Federation Assembly. What do we do with success? 10 years ago, we broke the old rules out of desperation. Today, we have the opportunity to write new ones based on cooperation rather than fear. The transformation had not been easy. Some species had struggled to adapt to the new reality. The proud Nexari had difficulty accepting help from beings they had once considered primitive. Several militaristic civilizations had attempted to carve out their own empires, only to discover that the Federation's defensive capabilities far exceeded anything the old Council had possessed. Fleet Admiral Park Minji commanded a navy that was less an instrument of war than a force for exploration and rescue. Her ship spent more time delivering aid to struggling colonies than fighting battles. The few conflicts that had arisen were usually resolved through negotiation rather than violence. Admiral, came a transmission from the exploration vessel Infinite Dawn. We've made contact with the Architect Collective in the Magellanic Clouds. They're requesting membership in the Federation. The architects were legendary even among ancient species. They were said to have built some of the galaxy's most impressive structures, including the ring worlds that orbited several stars in the galactic core. Their request for membership was a sign of just how far the Federation's reputation had spread. High Executor Vorthak had become an unexpected philosopher in his later years. His writings on the rise and fall of galactic civilizations were studied throughout the Federation. He had requested and been granted citizenship, choosing to spend his remaining years helping to build the society that had replaced his own. The Council ruled through the principle that order must be imposed from above, he wrote in his most famous work. The Federation has proven that order can emerge from below, through the voluntary cooperation of free beings. This is perhaps the most important discovery in galactic history. Dr. Kim's latest project pushed the boundaries of science itself, working with scientists from species that existed partially outside normal spacetime. He was developing communication networks that could connect not just different worlds, but different dimensions of reality. We're not just rebuilding what was lost, he explained to President Yoon during one of their regular briefings. We're creating something that has never existed before, a truly universal communication system that could theoretically connect every form of consciousness in the universe. The implications were staggering. If successful, the project would allow communication with forms of life that existed in ways humans could barely imagine. Energy beings that lived in the hearts of stars, quantum entities that existed in probability rather than reality, perhaps even the mysterious builders who had vanished eons ago. But the most remarkable changes were happening on a smaller scale. On worlds throughout the Federation, children grew up learning that diversity was strength rather than weakness. Human children learned to think in the mathematical concepts preferred by crystalline entities. Young Torvani learned to appreciate the emotional art forms of mammalian species. Captain Yoon Suman, daughter of the famous exploration captain, represented the new generation of Federation officers. Born after the Cascade, she had never known a galaxy divided by fear and prejudice. Her crew included beings from 30 different species, all working together as naturally as breathing. Contact established with the Void Walkers, she reported from her ship at the edge of known space. They're different from anything we've encountered before. They exist partially outside our reality, but they're willing to talk. The Void Walkers were among the most mysterious beings in the galaxy, existing in the empty spaces between stars. Their decision to make contact was another sign that the Federation's approach of peaceful cooperation was attracting even the most reclusive species. In the research centers scattered throughout Federation space, breakthrough followed breakthrough. The mixing of different scientific traditions had accelerated technological development beyond anything seen during the Council era. Medical advances that combined human biology with crystalline entity energy manipulation were extending lifespans across dozens of species. Agricultural techniques that merged Torvani harmony with Grellin's quantum gardening were feeding populations that would have starved under the old system. The irony, Vorthak observed during one of his lectures at the Federation University on Earth, is that by trying to prevent technological advancement, the Council actually slowed it down. The Federation's policy of free information exchange has produced more scientific progress in 10 years than the galaxy saw in the previous 1,000. President Yoon stood in her office overlooking Lake Geneva, watching the sunset paint the sky in brilliant colors. Through the window, she could see the lights of the orbital elevators that connected Earth to the space stations above. Ships from hundreds of worlds moved through the sky like slow-moving stars, each one carrying beings who had found hope in the Federation. Status report on the integration of the Wanderer fleets, she asked Secretary Han, who had remained her closest advisor throughout the transformation. Complete success, Han replied. Their knowledge of deep space survival has proven invaluable. They're already sharing their expertise with colonies in the Outer Rim. The Wanderers had brought more than just knowledge. They had brought stories, legends of the galaxy before the Council, tales of species and civilizations that had been forgotten for millennia. Their oral histories were helping Federation scholars piece together a more complete picture of galactic development. As the 10th anniversary of the Cascade approached, preparations began for the largest celebration in galactic history. Representatives from every Federation member species would gather in the Sol system, to commemorate not just their survival, but their transformation. Dr. Kim, now in his 80s but still working with the enthusiasm of a young scientist, put the finishing touches on his universal communication project. Initial tests successful, he announced to the Federation Council. We're detecting responses from forms of consciousness we never knew existed. The universe was bigger and more wonderful than anyone had imagined. And humanity, the species that had once faced extinction for breaking a single law, had opened doorways to wonders beyond counting. Grand Admiral Daho stood once again on the observation deck where he had made the decision to fight the Council 10 years ago. But instead of seeing the lights of battle, he saw the lights of 1,000 worlds working together in harmony. The only law of the stars was clear, he said to his young aide. Break it and humanity will burn you down. But we learned something the Council never understood. Sometimes you have to burn down the old to make room for the new. Outside the windows, the stars shone with the light of infinite possibility. The galaxy was reborn, not through conquest or control, but through the simple, radical idea that all conscious beings deserve to be free. And in that freedom, they had found something more precious than any empire. They had found each other.